Hi everybody, Dr. Minnow here. Now for today, this is like a perfect day at the beach. Tuesday morning, hardly anybody is here. I'm sure it was pretty crowded over the weekend. A lot of travel restrictions have been lifted. You can see there's hardly anybody here, just a dozen or so people. They are starting to collect fees, entry fees again. It's like 2,000 colones. Not much. About $375. So you can see it's pretty nice here, pretty secluded. Not a whole lot of people here. But that's not why we're here today. Today, we're going to talk about one of my biggest pet peeves that I've been complaining and talking about since the 90s. And it has everything to do with capitalism and the abuse of capitalism in our country and many other countries in the world. I have always said that all this technology that we are seeing that came out of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, especially in the space program, especially with any military developments, discoveries, research and developments, is all funded by taxpayer money. Now, what I don't understand is how all of these developments in research and science that were developed by the common money of taxpayers through these specific governmental organizations, why was this technology handed over to private corporations who was basically just screwing us over big time, using this technology against the general public who bought, funded all of these type of scientific programs? This is what I don't understand. I finally found somebody, and it took an Englishman to bring this issue up on a show called Going Underground with Ashton Ratasi, and he's interviewing this NASA shill. Take note of this NASA shill's last name. Then you can put whatever credibility. I'm just pulling out a few phrases and sentences to show you what I was talking about, how and why publicly funded research in the military and in NASA and many other programs are turned over to private corporations who are basically fascist state now because of their influence on the politics of your particular type of country. Look at that, nice cloud. So it's going to be raining here later. You can see that. So this is what I don't understand. I've been talking to people about this since the 90s. You know, capitalism doesn't work. It hasn't worked. What they forgot to calculate, our forefathers, was the human greed factor in capitalism. But you know, it's not capitalism. The common thing in all of these political, social structuring is the human greed factor, and it's evident in communism. You got some jerks, some narcissistic jerks trying to take control of everything. You got the socialism, which has always got a bad name because there's been nobody ethical, no meta-ethicist in charge of the situation. You got fascism that's just out of hand, capitalism that just went out of hand that turns into fascism, and whatever else that's out there of a organized society. Doesn't matter the religious or the political aspects of it. There's always the human greed factor that ruins it, screws it all up. Anyway, let's get on to the clip here. I've been saying this for years. I talked about this same stuff on the radio in the early 2000s, that why does corporate America get to capitalize on all of our private funded, taxpayer funded research and development of products, goods, and services. And my general opinion is if we took over all this, that we would never have a thing called income tax anymore, because we would be making a profit off of our investment, our taxpayer investment. This is so wrong, so wrong, so wrong. I don't know why nobody else is complaining and bitching about this. Why only me? And over all these years, it's just been shoved under the table. Now, come on, people. This is all part of the wake-up situation. Okay, let's get to these clips, and if this doesn't turn out too long, I'll add a few paragraphs of the video I did years and years and years ago and how I used to talk on the radio, 20 years, 25 years ago, and how nobody listens to me, and how this has just gotten so out of hand. Okay, and I'm talking about technology, as this guy mentions, GPS, the iPhone. This is all taxpayer-funded technology. All taxpayer-funded technology. And I want you to pay attention to a specific word that he uses over and over. And I'm going to pause it and I'm going to bring it to your attention. And you can tell this is just prescribed answers, propaganda, bullshit from the biggest bullshit agency of the first world countries, NASA. NASA, NASA. And look up what NASA means in Hebrew, huh? Lies, deceit. So check it out, check it out.
1-0. And liftoff. As the countdown to Mars continues, the perseverance of humanity launching the next generation of robotic explorers to the Red Planet.
What's it like as a scientist working these things out on such big time spans? I mean, I know you work with Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin. Here he was testifying in Congress. There are you. You've worked with so many different private companies, but you're working on timescales of 10 years, 20 years, longer?
Yeah, some of the missions take a long time. They take a long time to get funded, and then we have to design and build them and then fly them across these enormous distances of the solar system. So it's all about delayed gratification.
Okay, here's a first phrase that got my goat here. It is all about delayed gratification.
And of course, the usual questions that NASA has been asked since its inception. Is it worth it? What's the point? Maybe you better remind some of our audience about the side effects of what seems like esoteric expeditions to far-off places.
Well, to the contrary, of course, the development of space and space exploration has probably changed our world in countless ways. I mean, take your iPhone, take your smartphone, whatever it might be. That's space technology.
That's bullshit. It's our technology that we paid for with our tax money.
Take that GPS that you use for location, for mapping, for knowing where you are. That's space technology. And then look at the entire tech economy, which is fueled by the inspiration of children.
Okay, here's another term I want you to pay attention to, the inspiration to our children.
Who want to grow up and be engineers and scientists, largely because they get hooked on tech through seeing space missions that inspire.
Okay, there's that term I want you to pay attention to, inspire.
You see, arguably one could say that it was a pride of the United States, the space program by NASA. Do you think people are less inclined towards it because of all the private funds seeping in there? It's less about the United States and more about these private companies, and people are a bit more suspicious of private companies being involved in space than the USA as a nation.
Well, I think the introduction of private spaceflight has been a tremendous boon for innovation.
There's that term again, innovation, because these fascist corporations want to go in there and take everything over. That's their innovation.
And for driving costs down, and that lets us get more done. And most of these private companies are, after all, currently in the United States. We're just beginning to see a European wave of private spaceflight, launch companies, etc. And I can't wait to see that flower.
But, I mean, aren't there dangers of that? There were some reports that when the space shuttle tragically blew up, it was because of private outsourcing of space flight. I mean, on this mission that you're working on, presumably it's all government funding? There's no private elements to it?
Well, the New Horizons mission is a NASA mission entirely funded by NASA, which is an arm of our federal government.
Wait a minute. Every taxpayer is the arm, blood, sweat, and tears of our government. What the hell is this guy talking about?
And why do you think that Congress has been reluctant to sign off on money that Trump wanted to go? I understand Trump made a request for $25.2 billion for NASA. The House not liking it. Are these mundane political partisan issues on the Hill that you scientists don't really concern yourself with, but vaguely understand they're going to impact your missions?
Yeah. Well, actually, in our country, space exploration is supported by both major parties. And they're arguing about the last 10% of NASA's budget, not the basic 90%.
See, he's admitting it right there. That 90% is our taxpayer money.
And in fact, both presidential candidates have come out and endorsed continued human exploration, continued robotic exploration, studies of the Earth that are so important that we do from space. And I think the level of disagreement is down at the details. I'd like to see a higher budget, but we'll have to see how that turns out. And probably the biggest dividend is the inspiration that it gives.
There we go. He said it again. The biggest dividend of the space NASA program is inspiration. Bullshit.
It's really human beings at our best. Only human beings explore. Only human beings create new knowledge. And I think space exploration is probably the best example of that in our time.
Of course, some animals are going to wonder about that. Of course.
And now the entree of commercial companies are really showing that that's the way that humans need to become a multi-planet species and expand into the solar system for economic good.
Yeah, the economic good is for the corporations, not for the taxpayer. Because we as citizens obviously do not benefit from all the research and development and funding that we, the taxpayers, put into this NASA program.
For new knowledge, for inspiration.
There we go again. The whole objective of NASA is for inspiration.
And frankly, in some respects, because it's what we do. It's how human beings set ourselves apart from all the other species on the Earth. We are explorers.
Explorers, my tan took us. We're exploring greediness and how to make more profit.
Well, you mentioned those private entities, but as I said, you worked for Jeff Bezos' space company for a while. You've done a lot of private work. Actually, the public on Earth, arguably, is more and more worried about these quasi-monopoly companies having dominance over markets here on planet Earth, and presumably the natural worry is that they're going to start trying to monopolize space. Who knows? Start mining for minerals in space. Why this emphasis and why your approval of private corporations who are being called out here on Earth in Congress for abusing their positions, allegedly? Why do you want them to go into space?
The sudden, forced and illegal takeover of a government by a small group. So, rather than revolutionaries or soldiers, could that small group be corporations?
When you have a tiny group of people who have all the power.
Places that capitalism exploited and destroyed for profit and left behind misery, poverty, environmental devastation.
Well, let me say to begin that I don't know of any instance of the United States Congress accusing private companies of abusing their position.
What did he just say? Private companies abusing their position? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I should let him finish. One moment, please.
In space. That may be true on the Earth, and it may be true with, for example, the internet.
Yes, on Earth and in the internet. And you know damn well those fascists are going to want to take total control of all activity in space.
I don't know of any such instance in space. And what private space investment is doing is creating a tremendous wave of innovation.
There's that hashtag word again, innovation.
Like we saw when computers went from rare and expensive to routine and inexpensive because of the development of the PC. We're seeing development of small, innovative satellite systems, low-cost reusable launch. All of this is helping us explore, do more science, and expand humans into the cosmos in ways we couldn't when it was only government monopoly space programs.
Yeah, but you know that the pure science was done at publicly funded universities. The pure innovation and studies have been done to show that it is public funding that has created core research. You mentioned the technology of an iPhone. It's not these private companies. If anything, the private companies siphon off all that public taxpayer money funded research and try to privately capitalize off of it.
Here I have to disagree with you, and I'll give you a specific example. Private companies are now launching large numbers of satellites to study the Earth, the climate change, and NASA, the premier space agency on the planet, is buying data sets from those companies because they can't get it any other way, because the private companies are producing valuable data sets to the scientific community that the government satellites are not producing. And I think they're voting with their feet and showing that this wave of innovation and this explosion of new applications for space is to our advantage.
Is one thing that I've never understood is, of course, we fund NASA and the military through our tax money, the billions and over the decades, multi-trillions, hundreds of trillions of dollars that have been dumped into the NASA, the space program, and our military budget. And a lot of the great research and development, the new discoveries, inventions came out of these two organizations. So anything that was developed within NASA and the military is ours as a tax-paying citizenry, and everything that comes out of there is ours as a citizen, as a member of the United States of America. So given that, how do all these corporations end up with this technology where they're capitalizing on our inventions? And the big example I use is the goddamn computer. Didn't NASA pretty much develop the computer with our money, with our funding? Shouldn't the computer be ours to benefit from, to rake all the benefits from it, to regenerate an income within our own infrastructure in the United States of America that we can actually benefit and live easier? That's a good standard of living. That's capitalism, right? In a sense that the United States is acting like a corporation of themselves with one of the best research and development departments, and even in the universities, things that were researched and developed and came out of the university. This is our taxpayer money. Well, aside from private universities, of course, but they're governmentally funded too. So all products, goods, and services that was developed in NASA and our government and any government organization that somehow ended up in the hands of the private corporations or the old cronies from our politicians and all their little buddies ended up with this stuff to make the millions and billions of dollars, which should have been recirculated within our budget because we paid for that. We paid for the research and development and the formulation of all of these type of products. You get what I mean? Can you imagine no more federal income tax, no more Social Security tax, FICA? Can you imagine all that? Can you imagine no more paying for health benefits that the government can afford to give everybody health benefits? No more paying for your degrees and your education because there'll be so much money recirculated within our own country. See, capitalism, they screwed up, man. They screwed up. They blew it. They blew it. Awesome.
Okay, I'm Dr. Mendo, another day here. Oh my gosh, where's Lobo? We're down here for Lobo too. I don't know. Oh, there he is. I've been babbling along and he's just sitting there all nice and tranquilo. Okay, Pura Vida from Costa Rica, once again from Playa Ventanas and Ojachao. Actually, I would consider this a beautiful day at the beach because nobody is here. Pura Vida.